Okay. Our first guest of the evening is Liza Meyer. She's a registered landscape architect, RLA, for the city and project manager for the Franklin Park Action Plan. And she's going to guide us tonight through all of what has been proposed up to date. And we hope to get some more input, hopefully from residents about what they see, and for her to be able to get some firsthand responses. So without much ado, Liza, I know you have a wonderful presentation that has a lot of details. So let's just get started. And if everyone can please be on mute while she is doing the presentation, and then we'll take the discussion afterwards. It'll just be easier to facilitate. Thank you.
So are you all seeing my screen now? Yes, okay, good. I am trying to do things that we normally have several people in a public meeting with us when there's a presentation and a lot of content. And so I'm, forgive my sort of jumping around between a couple of different screens trying to make this work. If I seem discombobulated, it is because I am a little bit. But what I've put up first is not the, thank you for the introduction, Fatima, to start. Yes, I'm Liza Meyer. I'm with the City of Boston Parks Department, and I'm mostly going to talk about the Franklin Park Action Plan, and would love to hear your thoughts and comments on the information I share. But I wanted to first start with a plug for a survey we have online right now for the citywide open space and recreation plan. It's an update to the plan. We do this every 7 years. And one of the ways that we gather input is through an online survey. It's translated into 11 different languages. You can see that we extended it. It was supposed to close on the 31st, but we extended it for another couple weeks. So it's going to be open until June 15th. If you can take a few minutes, you can snap the QR code that's on the screen right there. You can visit boston.gov/openspace, and you should be able to access it, and that would be really helpful. So I'm not sure if somebody was drawing on the screen. Do other people see that? I'm not sure how.
Yeah, I just saw that also. I was wondering if that was something that you put into.
No, but let's see if
screen.
No, it's still there.
Do you want to share the presentation with myself, and that way I'll only be the person?
It's a big PDF. I'm not sure that I'd be able to email it to you, and I think I just saved it on my laptop, unfortunately. I was trying to do that earlier today. Let me just stop sharing. I'll reshare and see if that still happens.
Okay. And did you see the name that came across?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody seeing that again?
Yes.
Okay, great. All right. Well, now we'll move on to Franklin Park, and thank you all. This was mostly, I'm recapping two presentations that we did earlier this spring. We had two meetings, one in April, one in May. I'm going to give a quick overview of the April meeting and then try to run through the content from the full public workshop in May. If people joined any of those meetings, this will be repeat information, but there's a lot of content associated with this project, so it kind of never hurts to hear it a few times. And I'm happy to answer questions. So on April 28th, it was a city-led meeting. And so that was a process through which we talked through sort of our processes around capital projects and maintenance projects. And then on May 17th, it was a fourth public workshop with our design team for the action plan. We held it twice, once at noon and once in the evening at 6 or 6:30. And during the May 17th workshop, in addition to a presentation, we had small group discussions using virtual breakout rooms. So tonight we'll just have one discussion, but that was how we structured it before. So people may end up with questions about project costs, timelines, phasing. I'll try to share some high-level information about all of those things tonight, and then answer questions as we go, or at the end is probably the best bet. So just as a reminder, I'm guessing that many of you have been engaged in this process along the way, but I don't know that everyone has. So some of this, again, may be information you've heard before. But so while we're thinking holistically about the park with the action plan, there are different stakeholders, and this is sort of what Fatima was talking about at the beginning with, within the park, there are different bodies, different entities. The park is used, has been sort of split up in certain ways over time. So the zoo, the golf course, the maintenance yard, White Stadium, the bear dens are all spaces that are part of the park and used as part of the park today, but they have different owners in some cases, managers. Sometimes it's parks that owns and manages it, as is the case with the golf course, but it has a specific program that requires it to be considered in a different way than some of the other spaces in the park. And then there's Shattuck Hospital, which is not owned by the city and really has been carved out for a different purpose altogether, though the edges of that parcel are really important for us to understand and make recommendations, and possibly as it redevelops, make recommendations or understand what the recommendations are for improving the park along the Shattuck edge if we have that opportunity. Excuse me. So back in April, we showed this timeline of the project to date. We started back in December 2019, really got rolling in the new year. We were able to have, I think it was one public workshop before COVID. And then from there, we had to shift to virtual online meetings like this one. So we did that through 2020 and 2021. Last spring, so March 2021, we had a public workshop with the draft recommendations, plan recommendations. And then we spent a good amount of time last summer meeting with many different stakeholders and community groups around the park to get more feedback on those draft recommendations. And then here we are now coming back with the final public workshop, which is what I'll share tonight. The plan will be, the design team will work on finalizing the plan this summer, and so that hopefully it can be released at the end of summer, early fall. We're anticipating a 60-day comment period as the plan is released, so that people can, review the full document, provide us with written comments. We'll figure out the format for that as we get closer. It'll probably be something on our website that people can fill out. And then we'll take all of that additional feedback and have it so that as we move forward with implementation of any one of the projects that are being recommended as part of this plan, we'll have all that feedback to sort of give us a jump start on what people, their concerns or interests or priorities are. So one of the things we reviewed back in April was the process of what happens when an action plan recommendation becomes a park improvement project. This was a question we heard time and again last spring. So this diagram shows the general process that we'll follow. The action plan is presenting a series of ideas, but from these ideas, we have quite a bit of work to turn them into reality. So what happens is any number of the projects that are recommended will have a rough scope that come out of the action plan. And we will work to understand how we could fund those improvements and what the specific project scope should be and what the funding sources should be early on. And then eventually we will have a project that's like in our project list and staffed within the Parks Department that we can move forward with. We then hire a designer and work on developing that idea, doing additional analysis, additional design work. In that phase, we have more community input through a series of community meetings. So any project that moves forward will have more opportunities for input by, this group, all groups who we now have contact information for, who have been part of the action plan, and new people who may not have engaged in the action plan at all, but tune in at that point. We'll also need to make sure that we understand all the, standards and requirements associated with any project. This entire property is landmarked, so any proposed work will be reviewed and approved by the Boston Landmarks Commission. There are also resource areas within the park. So anything that's just close to a wetland area will need to be reviewed by the Conservation Commission. And eventually we'll get to a final design, which can then be built and maintained. So it's a lengthy process that we follow with all of our park improvement projects, and this would follow that kind of process as well. So funding is another thing that we've talked a lot about and answered a lot of questions about along the way. And it's an important factor that facilitates moving from an idea to reality. So as people probably know, the city has already committed $28 million for improvements to Franklin Park from the sale of the Winthrop Square garage. And of that amount, $5 million has gone into an endowment fund for ongoing maintenance and park activation. So programming and maintenance are coming out of that endowment fund. The remaining $23 million is going to be used for park improvements, but we'll also be seeking funding through other sources. So our annual capital budget, we sought funding this year in our annual capital budget. And there are a couple of projects that already have funding from there. So that's to augment this money that's from the Winthrop Square funds. What we're hoping the Winthrop Square funds afford is the opportunity to jumpstart projects that wouldn't typically fall within our cyclical park renovation work. So that would mean investing in spaces that need more than just an upgrade or a rehab. I'll touch on some of those potential kinds of projects tonight, but just so that you can think of something like the bear dens, right? That whole space needs more than just a basic touch up or renovation. It really needs an overhaul and a reimagination of what it can be to serve people today, because it has really fallen into a state of extreme disrepair and is not ever going to serve as bear dens again in the future. We're not going to keep bears there. So the action plan overall, the recommendations of the potential projects could total close to $175 or $200 million to do everything. So we need to keep that in mind. This is a plan for the long term. This is not what we're going to do in the next 5 years. This is 25 years worth of work. It could be longer, could be shorter. There may be projects that drop off that over time no longer seem right. That no longer people might be interested in today, but in 5-10 years, people don't find so compelling. So we need to be flexible and we need to work incrementally and acknowledge that things will change as we go. But even still, it'd be great to hear today about what kinds of things you want us to be focusing on first, so that we can have that in mind as we move forward. And then I'll try to do this quickly because I realize already that I'm going kind of slow. So there's funding for park improvements and there's funding for maintenance. So I touched on this before. There's capital funds, there's the Winthrop Square funds, and then you can also seek outside funds, grants to supplement that. And then there's maintenance. We know that park maintenance and park improvements go hand in hand, and that maintenance is of major concern for the community. So the action plan includes recommendations around maintenance, including ways to expand our current staffing, better address existing needs, as well as address future needs. We have been working with our maintenance division along the way, and we'll continue to do so as this project moves forward. And we're also working closely with the Franklin Park Coalition. Many of you may have taken their maintenance survey that they released, I don't know, sometime in the last year. I can't remember the exact timing of it, but it was helpful information about what kinds of things need to get addressed at Franklin Park in the near term so that we could prioritize getting some of that work started. So currently our maintenance funding comes from the operating budget, the city's annual operating budget. We're going to be able to supplement that with funds from the endowment trust. And that work is beginning. There's a meeting of the endowment trust at the end of this week. And hopefully at that meeting, they'll be voting on the expenditures for this first year, and then we'll be able to start that work. We also rely on volunteers, and then the city is developing a new Power Corps program, which is a workforce development program that will hopefully be launched soon, that will bring job training and address the maintenance needs at the same time. So these are just a quick summary of some of the things that are already underway that we heard from community members throughout this process that need to be addressed, that we heard through the coalition survey, like I said. So we've requested funding. We've done a make safe study for the bear dens already to understand what needs to happen there for that to be a better place in the park that's not in such poor repair. We've sought funding, and it looks like we'll get funding in this year's capital plan, so FY23, to begin to implement that work. Once the make safe work is done, then we can start thinking about what should this space be in the future. How do people want to use it? But we first need to like fix the there's holes in the concrete and things like that that just aren't okay to leave. And we also need to get that property transferred from the state to the city so we can do that work. Right now, it's not even in city ownership. So that is something that we're working on. And we also requested funding in collaboration with Boston Public Schools to make improvements at White Stadium to the fields and track and field areas. That's something that they've been wanting to do for a long time. And we've partnered with them on school properties throughout the city to do that. So we'll have a similar arrangement here. And hopefully the Public Facilities Department will also be working with them on an assessment of the building itself. So we'll be able to, well, Parks Department will be working on the building. We'll be able to look at the space cohesively and really make it work better for BPS students as well as the community as it's a tremendous asset in the park and should be improved. I think I touched on most of the rest of these, small repairs that have been ongoing. Did I skip one? No. Okay. So now I'm going to shift into the slides that were shared on the meeting on the 17th, or the two meetings that were shared on the 17th. So these were walked through by members of the design team. And I will try to emulate some of the language that they use to describe these proposals, and I may not get it quite right. But this walked through the design process, which hopefully many of you were a part of. It started with a research and analysis phase. All of these documents are posted on the project website. I'll make sure to drop those links in the chat before this call ends, but it's franklinparkactionplan.com. The best place to find, you can find things under resources, which are all the old meetings and slides and everything like that. There's also a place, a tab called latest news, and that's where we post, if we did a survey and asked people to give us their input after a meeting, we post the results of the survey under something like latest news. So I'll put that in a little bit. But so we're sort of at the end of the design work, trying to pull together the information we gathered about implementation. They're folding all of this into one cohesive plan that will be released later this summer. All right, so this provides sort of a quick summary of the thousands of voices that we heard along the way to understand what people love about the park, what needs improvement, and what the opportunities are for those improvements. So we gathered input through community workshops, surveys, meetings, meetings like this, walks in the park, lots of ways that people gave us their ideas. And the design team consolidated all of those ideas into four big concepts or four big design ideas to organize everything that we heard. So those are unify the park, amplify magnet destinations, clarify movement, and connect and see what it says, activate the edges. So what I'm going to do is walk through, I'm going to walk through each of these and get into a little bit more detail. But this gives you sort of the overall picture of what falls under each of these four big ideas. So things like, I think it's really important probably to touch on this first. There are some sort of baseline needs across the park that we heard consistently, like more restrooms, improve the ecological health of this landscape, better maintain the park, give us better lighting, better signage and wayfinding, improve benches and seating. Those are sort of the basics that need to be addressed across every project. And and they don't necessarily land neatly into one of these 4 categories. So I may not spend a lot of time talking about those basics. Improve the drainage infrastructure, right? All of these things that are just like baseline standard of care need to be done. And that will always happen, whether they're in standalone projects or as part of another project. And then on top of that, there are improvements that are specific to certain areas in the parks, whether they're in the park, whether it's the playstead or an entrance, or the circuit loop, that fall into these 4 categories. I hope that makes sense. So this was results from the Franklin Park Coalition survey about maintenance priorities. So just to give you a sense of the kinds of things that were identified that need to be addressed, that we're hopefully going to be able to get quite a bit of taken care of this year if we haven't already done it over the winter. All right, the overarching priorities that we heard from the community thus far fall into 3 primary categories. Maintenance projects, which include what I just showed you. They're more immediate in nature and will be focused on specific issues facing the park and its users. Ecological restoration projects, which include things like invasive plant removal, and they require strategic and sustained plan for longer term investment. It's not something you just do once and are done. It's something we'll have to do for years and years and years, probably in perpetuity. And then capital projects, which are more typical park improvement projects, one-time projects like restoring the overlook, or improving a playground. Those will have sort of an immediate, lasting effect and can last for decades once we make the improvement. So this is just a quick look at funding. I mentioned before that we have funding coming from different places, and if we were to do every project that was identified, it could cost $200 million. But every project, each project has a different range of costs. Some can be done, for less money, especially if it's ecological restoration projects, invasive species management. That's work that can be done and has to be done incrementally over time. You might have a big investment up front, but then stick with it with a smaller investment each year to sustain the work that you've done. A playground project could be, closer to $1 million, which would be on the lower end of the project costs. And then we may have very significant projects like restoration of the overlook or Elma Lewis Playhouse that could be, $10 million or more. So there are ways with any project that we could phase it, scale it, make design decisions along the way to stretch our dollars in certain ways. So none of these costs are fixed, but I think it's helpful for people to think about how, there's a range of project costs. And so, and those will be changing over time, but we'll be thinking about how we can make the dollars go as far as possible and understand that any investment needs to be maintained and sustained. It's never a one-time thing. And this is a range of all the different things that need to be considered as any project moves into implementation. So we'll see a range of sizes. We'll see projects in different locations in the park. Some projects will have, varying timelines. Many of the projects will require multiple funding sources. So we'll have to think about permitting and logistics. There will be, a need for coordination with other city departments and stakeholders, both within the park and outside the park. We'll always be working with the community along the way to get additional review, input. And then, as I said early on, that the park is a landmark, so we'll need to make sure that anything goes through the Landmarks Commission as well. So the 4 different zones that I'm going to show some images for are, and this is just purely because it works to show these on a slide together. It's not, we won't be approaching work around these zones. It's just you can't look at the whole park in detail at once because it's so big. So we'll start up at the north at the Playstead and Lung Crouch Woods, and then move around. Then the zoo comes next, so we're not going to focus on the zoo because they plan their own property. But then we'll come around to the Blue Hill Ave side of the park and the entrance and go all the way along American Legion down to the maintenance yard and Scarborough Pond. So that's a whole zone. And then, excuse me, we'll look at Ellicott Dale and the Wilderness, so over on the western side of the park. And then at the end, or last, we'll look at the circuit loop, so sort of right in the center. Okay. I think I covered this one pretty well. That, you know, there are things that will be covered in every project, it's lighting, furnishing, signage, and so forth. So that's just reiterating that idea. All right, so let's start with the Playstead and Long Crouch Woods. If you were in the last workshop, so March 2021, the idea here was to renew this well-loved space to work for many different kinds of uses. So sports, spectating, tailgating, education, large events, all those kinds of things. And if we zoom in to a plan view, you can see a list of potential projects that could come out of improvements at the Playstead and Long Crouch Woods. And I don't know, I'm hopeful this is something that people can read. If they can't, I'll make sure that everyone has a path to these slides. It's on the project website, and then you can zoom in on your own after the fact. But we've talked about, I mentioned a few of these already. So restoring the bear dens so that it has a use in the park today. Adding a new pedestrian entrance along the Seaver Street edge where there are currently fewer entrances. Wrapping around to this side of this plan, we've heard many times that there are groups of people who are interested in seeing dedicated dog park space within Franklin Park, and there are groups of people who are adamantly not interested in that. So no decision has been made about whether a dog park lands at Franklin Park or even more than one, but it's something that could happen in this location and elsewhere. So if we want to put it on the table, and it's something we'll talk with people more about. Looking at improving parking, creating an actual parking lot over here so that all of these heavily, you know, if we were to restore the overlook for Alma Lewis, there will be places for people to park that aren't too far away. They'll be able to park on this side and on this side, and for events at White Stadium. Probably the biggest recommendation here is the restored overlook with a new stage for Alma Lewis and seating. And there's some notes here about what could be involved in a project like that. So this is just an example of how we might approach a recommendation. We've heard time and again that there's an interest in having a better space, a permanent new space for Alma Lewis, and that the overlook obviously needs investment and improvements. So can that use be returned to the overlook where it historically was, which would involve historic masonry restoration. There are, you know, stairs that don't go anywhere currently. We need to have a plan for those. We need to remove invasive species. We would build a stage with some lighting and support spaces. There'd be seating, there'd be restrooms, there'd be approach paths so that people could, you know, access the overlook and stage accessibly. And anything that we do there would be, again, there'd be a community process associated with it. It would go to landmarks. We'd likely need to go through a fundraising effort because I'm imagining it would be costly. But it would give beloved use in the park a better space to support that program. So that's an idea for what is being called Zone 1, the Playstead Long Crouch Woods. And I'm just going to keep moving around, and we can come back and talk about any of these. There's 4 different ones to go through. So this is Peabody Circle. The Peabody Circle, and then, as I said, it wraps around down Blue Hill Ave, American Legion, over to Scarborough Pond. This is essentially the park's main entrance along Blue Hill Ave, and it's a space that right now is very car oriented, but could be rethought to still provide vehicular access, but maybe do it in a way that doesn't allow the car to dominate it quite so much, and reduce the lanes of traffic that are offered through there with parking in the middle, and create spaces that are more multifunctional and flexible, create spaces along the edge of the park that are more inviting, instead of feeling like that wall is potentially not inviting people in. Are there ways to open up the wall so that people do feel welcome? Show the next image. So here we are. Again, that view you just saw was right up here. But this whole zone extends quite a way. So this shows, again, a series of projects that could happen along the side of the park, from improved entrances, improvements at the area that used to serve as the service drive to the old refectory that is now just sort of that pit off of Blue Hill Ave that is oftentimes filled. People dump things in there and we clear it out, and then people dump things in there again. So improvements to that area so that it is safe and possibly functional in some way. Maybe it can be an entrance into the park again. Are there improvements we can make at the playground along American Legion Highway? Maybe introduce water play or a splash pad along there. Adding another entrance down here. There's some improvements that BTD is proposing along American Legion for crosswalks. So, they've done those bike lane changes, but we don't have safe crossings across American Legion Highway. So that's been in design, and there's definitely an improved crossing here, right at the main entrance to the American Legion playground and the barbecue area. So that would be a nice improvement. We've also added a blue bike station there, so people can come to the park and then borrow a bike and bike around the park if that interests them. Restoration to Scarborough Pond, managing the vegetation around the pond, managing invasive species in the woodlands, as well as at Scarborough Hill. There's a lot of vegetation management that needs to be done along the side of the park. And then there's the notes here are focused around the PBD circle improvements, so proposed improvements there that I was touching on before, to create spaces for gathering. Could there be a space for a farmer's market? More plantings, more multi-purpose space. We'd still have parking. They've organized and expanded the lot up at Refectory Hill to serve both, zoo parking, golf course parking, and then just regular everyday parking. So that is sort of the general set of recommendations there. I'm going to go on to the next one. There we go. Ellicott Dale in the wilderness. So now we've come down and around, right? So we're back sort of over by the Shattuck Picnic Grove, the tennis courts. This is a view from the field just beyond the Shattuck Picnic Grove, looking back towards the Shattuck. So the Shattuck would be back here. It's not, there is no Shattuck in this image, but if it was there, it would be a building in the background. Excuse me. So this is envisioned as an everyday destination, an active edge within the park. Here, I'm going to move this to this view. So that view was taken from about here, looking back, if that makes sense. So standing here, looking back in that direction. So there was at Ellicott Dale, both at the upper Picnic Grove and the lower Picnic Grove, there's an idea that this can be an all-day destination. You can come and picnic. You can have a flexible lawn for, picnicking, laying in the park, enjoying the sun. There's also still the softball field there that can be retained, or in the future it could be removed depending on what people want to see. We've heard from a lot of people that they really love playing softball there. But if we're able to better serve that use at the playstead, maybe eventually that is used less for softball and more for just passive lawn use. There's lots of opportunities for improving the plantings around that area. A woodland boardwalk and trails could bring people into the natural areas right around that part of Ellicott Dale. Diversifying the plantings, adding flowering trees could make this a really beautiful area with a lot of variety over the course of the seasons of the year. Remember that this is connected to the wilderness through the Ellicott Arch, and there's improvements that can be made to Ellicott Arch just to restore the masonry, keep it in good shape, maybe add some lighting. There's some there's trees growing out of the masonry, so manage those, really make sure that space stays intact. And then once you're in the wilderness, most of the work that needs to happen there is really around signage, wayfinding, invasive species management, and revegetation where appropriate. And then on the last but not least, for this walk around the park, zone 4, the circuit loop and circuit drive. So the recommendation here is to think about clarifying movement throughout the park. So right now, circuit drive works really well for cars. It doesn't work so well for pedestrians or bicyclists. There is a bike lane that's painted in, but cars drive in it or park in it. Pedestrians have a hard time crossing circuit drive because there's just not enough safe crosswalks designed into it, and cars come through there so quickly that you're really taking, it can be risky to try to get across that road. So what are some recommendations that can be made to make this a more inviting, multimodal space in the park? So a reestablished circuit loop for right now, it's a carway, but in the future, if it could be multimodal, it would serve pedestrians, bikes. It could have buses still. It could have cars going in 2 directions. It could have cars going in 1 direction. It could be open all the time, or it could be closed at certain periods of time. The way the police are now, they're closing it at night on the weekends to reduce the amount of activity that can be problematic in the park overnight. So we want to look at what are ways to make sure this park serves the purposes, or this road serves the purposes that it needs to within the park, but also becomes an amenity within the park rather than car-centric divider within the park that makes it hard to get across. So imagine it as a parkway. So it could support canopy trees, it could have appropriate lighting and signage, it could have safe pedestrian pathways, it could have better drainage solutions to remove those enormous puddles that flood out different sections of the roadway. So the proposals around circuit loop and circuit drive are complex, but the idea of potentially reducing or removing car traffic from any portion of circuit drive is certainly interesting and worth exploring further. So we'd likely consider any improvements in phases and would only move forward with changes with careful testing around traffic feasibility to make sure that any changes wouldn't cause adverse impacts elsewhere. And we would want to be working closely and would need to work closely with the transportation department and other park partners to make sure that anything that we propose will work. You know, the zoo, for instance, has lots of thoughts about cars and access, and we'll want to be working closely with them. But there are steps we can take, you know, in the nearer term that aren't about closing the road, but that could improve the feel within the park to make it more comfortable for walkers and bikers. And there may be ways to test out temporary closures, like you see in Cambridge on Memorial Drive, or the city does with its open streets throughout the summer, where they'll close certain portions of certain streets for a weekend or a day. So maybe there are things like that that we can test out along Circuit Drive, and you know, it will still require quite a bit of planning and coordination, but it's interesting to think about. And then another thing that this plan here shows is an expanded parking lot on the parcel known as the Sausage Lot, which runs along the side of the zoo where they have their parking now. So that sort of informal parking lot, gravel parking lot, could be greatly improved and made much more efficient to better serve the zoo parking needs, but also address some really significant stormwater issues and address the fact that there's no vegetation in that parking lot. So can we add some trees in? Can we make it safer for pedestrians to move through there, while also doing a better job of meeting the parking demand that we know is there. So I know that was a ton of information, and we hopped all over the park and looked at a lot of different projects and touched on several different priorities that we've heard along the way. So I'm happy to go back to anything, spend more time on it, try to answer questions, provide some clarity. As I said before, it's too many screens for me to manage putting things in the chat right now too, but I will do that in a second so that people can find this information and take a look at it on your own time. And I'll also note that the full meeting on the 17th was recorded, and that's up on the website too. So while I was giving you sort of a summary version of the presentation, you could hear it from the design team if you wanted to listen to the full recording.
Okay,
So
great.
I'm going to stop there and turn it back over to you, Fatima, and can go
Sure.
from here. Thank you all.
Great, thank you. So what we're going to do is start taking some questions from the chat, if that's, since there already are questions inside. I'm gonna, let's see. There was a question about community outreach, Blue Hill Avenue, connecting Seaver Street, Esmond, all of the surrounding streets, Franklin Hill Housing Community, that where did the consultants and planners go to get feedback? That's our first question.
Where have they gone to get feedback?
Right.
We have we've reached out to many groups and people along the way. It's far too many for me to list. We have pages of meetings and phone calls and contacts that we've made, and I'm happy to share that if it's not already up on the website. It could very well be. So the most recent efforts were after last March, when we did the third public workshop. We did a series of meetings around the park. I came to one of the Greater Mattapan meetings, it was last summer. And since then, and we had conversations with many stakeholders, like the zoo, again, within the park, to make sure we were hearing from them. And then we came back to the community this spring. So I don't know that that's answering the question, but it's a very long list. I'm happy to provide it in writing, because we do have it all written out, and I can send that to you and you can share it if that seems like the easiest way.
That would be great. Thank you.
Okay.
Another question is, what does ecological restoration mean in lay terms? Does it mean planting new trees, cleaning up the poor maintenance areas, upgrading stonework? Where's the restoration of Scarborough Pond and tree cleaning and restoration, especially in and around Crouch Woods?
Okay, yeah, so I wouldn't say that masonry restoration, I wouldn't put under the category of ecological restoration. I would consider that under masonry or historic masonry work. But the ecological restoration work would be all the other things that you listed. So addressing invasive species. So there's a lot of invasives that have taken over the understory within the park. And in order to have a healthy woodland, you need to allow for the next generation of trees to take root and grow into saplings and eventually become mature trees. But if you have invasive species, they take over the understory and don't allow that kind of natural regeneration to occur. So we would need to remove the invasives, in some cases replant, yes, because if you just leave the ground after you remove plants alone, the invasives will come right back. So we'll need to remove undesirable species, replant or reseed, depending on the landscape area. There are trees that need to be cared for, whether it's pruned or removed in some cases, new trees planted. Management of the edges, these transition spaces between a woodland and a mowed lawn really could be done with a better gradient than what we see at Franklin Park. Right now, it's a very stark transition between those two kinds of spaces, but with some careful care of adding in more understory plantings, again, native species along the edges to create these buffers. We'll see some of the, I think the original intent of the park will reemerge with that kind of work. And all of it requires maintenance. I don't know if I caught all the pieces of the original question. I suppose I could open the chat and see it myself. And how does it work with maintenance and management? Yes, so any ecological restoration project will have to come with a complementary maintenance and management approach. You cannot restore anything if you don't sustain what you invest in the first place.
Okay, thank you. Another one is, let's see. Michelle White asked a question. Has disability access been discussed throughout the park along with the playgrounds being fully accessible for children with disabilities?
Yeah, when we do playground improvements, we absolutely make them accessible for children with disabilities. So, all of our projects meet ADA, but where possible, we really look to provide inclusion where possible, which is, sort of going beyond the basics of ADA, especially with playground design. ADA is pretty basic. But an inclusive playground is one where children, of all abilities can play together rather than having, only certain spaces that are accessible. And doing just like the quick mental tour, all of the playgrounds within the park, we should be able to make, improve accessibility on when the time comes to make improvements in those spaces. So we did do some accessibility upgrades along American Legion when we did work there a few years back, added an accessible sidewalk, added accessibility into the picnic area, improved accessibility at the play structures themselves, but we could take that up another step.
Okay. There was also a question about, you brought up about parking in the Playstead area.
Okay.
That, let's see.
I'm just scrolling to see if I can find it.
Because there was a concern that residents had pushed to make sure that there would not be parking in the area. Why would it be brought back?
Okay, I think that I may be misunderstanding, but I think the comment may be, why would you reopen the Seaver Street entrance, which was closed very intentionally years ago to better manage traffic flow and reduce adverse impacts to the Seaver Street edge of the neighbors along the Seaver Street edge of the park?
Right, but the one that says we close vehicle traffic and access in and around the Playstead for a very practical and safe reason.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah, and I think those are aligned questions, because right now the only real vehicular access along the Playstead is along Pierpont Road there, or in and out over by White Stadium. So that neither of those are proposed to change. And it may very well be that reopening Seaver just doesn't make sense, right? And I'm fine with that. We don't have to do that, but we are exploring how could it work. These are ideas on on paper right now, and I fully understand there is a long history at this park of very intentional moves to control vehicular access as a response to a time when cars were everywhere and cars were making it hard to use the park enjoyably. So as we explore the changes along Circuit Drive that may or may not change the way cars flow through there, we need to seriously look at that and see what could work and understand what won't work. So, nothing is going to be done rashly, and I fully understand. I know I see the comment coming from Louis Elisa, and I has made this comment before. And yeah, I understand that, and I hear that, and we have to look at it more before anything changes. And as of now, there's a stone wall built there. So we're not, no one's going to be surprised by traffic flowing through there, because there's no way for cars to come through there. But it's something to yeah, it's something to continue to look at and make sure that we don't make it and reintroduce a problem.
There definitely, we understand about the bikes and the ATVs and, parties, et cetera,
Yeah.
that were going along certain areas. But I think there are definitely, this past couple of weeks, there have been incidents where actually buses couldn't go through and actually had to take a different route and actually affected residents.
Where were I'm sorry, can you explain it again? Where were, what was happening with the buses?
Alenza, are you online here? I'll let one of the persons who actually was directly affected.
I had a feeling I was going to get put on the spot.
No problem. There you are. I'll let you speak for yourself. I didn't want to speak for you.
Well, very quickly, because this is this could be a whole lot of storytelling, but there was 2 Fridays ago when the road closures happened and Circuit Drive was cut off, which I did not know, and neither did Fatima, and a lot of community leaders were not made aware of. So that was one issue. The second issue was that the buses, in particular the 16, which normally cuts through Franklin Park, was being diverted. And because we currently have a very sparing public transit system, I missed the buses, both the 21 and 31, because I live on Morton Street. The last buses of the evening, I had just missed by a few minutes because the orange line was moving to a crawl coming in. And my plan was to take the 16 to connect to Blue Hill Avenue and then catch the 28 bus, because that's the only way to access Morton Street in the late evening outside of those buses. So the 16 was diverted. The driver did not announce to the passengers until she left the station that the 16 was being diverted, and said the bus had to be diverted due to road closures. When I asked her why, she said, "I don't know. I just know that I can't drive in." I had to then get off the bus carrying my gear and my groceries because I had spent the day out, and I had to walk 40 minutes to get home.
Okay.
So people
So
are
what time, do you know, can you tell me what time of day it was?
It was the evening. It was at 12:30 at night.
Okay. Yeah, so I would imagine that the road is being closed sometime, obviously, before that. I just don't know. Yeah, that's a great comment. I don't know enough about the road closures and the timing, but certainly if it's happening while the bus is still running its daily schedule, then those buses would be diverted. And communicating that seems like something that we ought to be able to do better.
Can I jump in? This is Deputy Cullinane from the Boston Police Department.
Great.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you, Jen.
No problems.
We have everyone here.
So yes, the roads, there are some road closures in and around the city. They were, that information was put out through social media. This is something that has been going on for the last 2 to 3 years, just relative to some of the issues that we've been having with the congregation of large car groups and ATVs and a number of other issues related to that impact public safety. So that was one of the reasons this year, which hasn't been done necessarily in previous years. We did put it out over social media platforms to inform people, and the various stakeholders, other law enforcement partners are also involved in this. So that was one of the things that the transit police is aware of it. So I'm not sure on their end how that's communicated to individuals that are taking public transportation. But it's important for me to hear these things so that I can kind of follow up with the different partners that I work with on this initiative, so that we can ensure that people have the information that they need.
Thank you. The way that I found out was because I have Google alerts. I don't, I didn't see it on Twitter. I didn't see it on Facebook. It came up under a Universal Hub article at first, which had a link to the BPD news activity. I understand, I think many people understand about ATVs and other things. We have not experienced what we experienced in, I want to say like 2 years ago, at all this year at any rate. The only time yesterday evening that I saw actually a brigade of bikes was actually on the Arbor Way. That's where I saw it last night at 6:02 p.m. So going on to the Jamaica Way. So the issue, though, larger issue, I think this was brought up in the only public meeting that I've heard about, that I was actually at about this, and there were others before it got Zoom bombed, was to engage from Councilor Mejia to actually ask for more engagement with those individuals. Because in this city, one of the problems that we have, of course, is lack of entertainment space for those who are in their late teens, early 20s, and late 20s. And I think that's probably, I think we even have a chief of nightlife now, as my understanding. A position has been opened up for that. So it has been recognized, but the closing down in an urban area of streets where someone such as myself, if I have to take my parents into the hospital, because I have elderly parents who are at that stage, the amount of time that it takes me in order to get to them and to take them to the hospital, it adds no less than 10 to 15 minutes for a commute. For area streets such as the closing off from Blue Hill Avenue to American Legion is significant. That's no small closure. That's a big deal. I understand use of the park. I think most people do. There are signs that say the park is closed at dusk, right? When it starts when the usage of the park. I think most people understand that it's not daytime, it's not daylight. But there has to be, I think you're gonna have to have better conversations and engagement in order to come to some realistic, where you don't have people finding out that something's closed publicly at 1 o'clock in the morning. That's just not really sustainable. So
I can appreciate that, and I do agree that again, it was something where the community service officers were supposed to be pushing out that information regarding this, and so again, we have to work at better communication, understandably so that we don't run into these issues in the future. So I definitely am hearing what everyone is saying. I'm taking note, and as we move forward, we will make the adjustments.
That would be great. And even when we make adjustments, just so you know, the GMNC has a public services committee. It is the first Tuesday of every month. And community service officers are always welcome. I believe tomorrow night, public services meeting, we have Captain John Flynn to talk further about the street closures. But we always say engagement, engagement, engagement. You can never go wrong with too much engagement. Because this is where, after coming out of COVID and everything else, people need to be able to get around. Circuit Drive from Blue Hill Avenue to Morton Street is a major way for people to commute. And we have to think of, safe ways for people to travel. That makes, as well for pedestrians, cyclists, and people who are in cars. Circuit Drive is also in the morning during the week a huge spot where school buses congregate. There are no less than 6 down right in front of Franklin Park every morning from Monday through Friday. So Barbara Crislow, if you have a question. You can unmute yourself, Barbara.
Yeah, Deputy, is there any way that this can be put back onto the MBTA? Because they have starters that announce, well, they decide when the buses are going out and what the problems are. Somehow, if there's going to be a road closure, they should be the ones that make the announcement of that these closures are happening. And at some point, there are folks out here that don't use social media as quick as everybody else. I guess just like Alyssa got on the train and she thought she was going home, on the bus, and she thought she was going home, but she was being detoured. I think before she got on the bus, somebody should have said something to her to let her know that. And it should be on both ends. The 16 goes all the way into what, UMass? And I think that whole route, somebody should have some sort of acknowledgement saying that that bus is going to make detours at various times. And basically, I think that's an MBTA issue.
I'm sorry, I just want to say, I'll definitely communicate that with them. I'll make that one of the first things that I do tomorrow.
Okay, and the other thing on Circuit Drive, when Liza was talking about the safety of people walking along in the park, and the amount of traffic and speeding, maybe it's a time that, like we put speed humps on Circuit Drive, leave it open, but put the speed humps in there so that traffic will be controlled, so that people, walking in the park and they're, with their children and so on and so forth, that traffic can be slowed down to not a crawl, but a minimum so that it's safe.
Slower speeds, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that those kinds of ideas, whether speed humps work or not, I know they work, but whether speed humps are feasible here or not, we wouldn't know without looking into it further. But I think it's great to hear ideas because yeah, we need to consider the options and figure out what could work, given all the many needs along this road, so that it does feel and is safer within the park.
Yeah, because I'm just thinking that, with the speed humps, it may not, and if people are aware, maybe it will, you don't have to close the road anymore, and it can be maintained at a correct speed, basically. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Barbara. Louis, if you have a very short question.
Is there such a thing as a very short question after?
There are.
After hour and a half
There are.
presentation. No, yeah, it's like a very short presentation. Listen, the idea of making the public responsible for things that don't work is really abhorrent to me. If police patrol the park like they're supposed to, there'd be no need to close the road in the park, because the problem that they have for groups congregating after hours, it can't exist if the police patrol the park. That's the bottom line. When we had the problem 3 weeks ago, I called B2, took them an hour to come back out, but they moved them for a second time, so they say, but they moved them, they were gone. If the park is closed and no one is able to congregate, then you don't have that problem. That's a very simple process. And all the other processes that we used to have 25-mile-an-hour signs along Circuit Drive, and like every other month when the Franklin Park Coalition first started, the police used to stop, like, I forgot what it was called, MOP or some squad that they had. And on the mornings, not so much in the evening, but in the mornings, they would do traffic stops when people were speeding through the park. So without enforcement, without consistent enforcement, you're going to have the problem where it's Blue Avenue, Seaver Street, Morton Street, Cummings Highway. And so to a large extent, we put up a lot of barriers for people who are doing the right thing, and the folks who are doing the wrong thing wait till you're not looking, and they do what they have to do. I think, enforcement is a better job than putting speed humps. And I think the signs going back up telling folks it's 25-mile hours through the park, and then some enforcements. Maybe we'll just, as we start with the cameras, either way, I think the public should not have to be the victim. And I agree with you that, Lindsay should have known when she got on the train that any changes in the traffic pattern for transportation that connects to the Orange Line should have been known to her when she got on the train, because she might have wanted to get off someplace else, maybe like Ruggles or Jackson Station, in order to facilitate her getting home.
Thank you. I think looking at the time, one of the things that would be good is if, Liza, if you don't have it ready to put in the chat, if you could email it to me, to send me a link.
What's that? I'm sorry.
For the survey.
Oh,
You sent
yeah.
a short survey that
Yeah,
people
let
can
me,
complete. Because one of the, you talked about dog parks, you talked about a lot of things, but one of the things that I think when you're looking at the park overall is to make sure that no matter what's done, in the end, is that it is equitably distributed, so that, because this park, in all honesty, is probably the most important park in the city. And it really does serve as it's supposed to have a quieting effect on people when they come in, that they feel refreshed and renewed once they leave. But one of the things that in listening over time to the different ideas is to not lose sight that as more and more things that we put inside of our park, the less open space that we have, right? No matter what it is, regardless if it's a dog park or whatever else. But we do have to have a balance of ideas, but we do also have to remember equity. The only last thing I had a question is, are CPA monies being looked at all? Or
that would absolutely be an option. Yeah. I mean, CPA, we would need to be closer to having a specific project that we could apply to CPA for funding for, but we have been successful in getting CPA funding for some other projects in the city, and I absolutely think that projects here could be good for that. I did put in the link to the survey. It's not an active link because it just came in as a website, but if you go to boston.gov/open space, that is the page for our open space plan survey. So it's not a Franklin Park specific survey, it's the citywide open space plan, but you can add comments on Franklin Park or anything like that in there, but it's across the whole city.
okay, all right, great, thank you. Let's see, Yasser had a comment. Calling for more police interventions, welcoming more incarceration to our news, to people who just want to have a good time. Yes, for sure, absolutely.
Liza, is there any way to reopen the comment period for Franklin Park? Because we're talking about Franklin Park, and I feel like to put us on the open space, because I did the open space plan as well, but there's only one space for you to actually leave a comment, and I think it's on page like 7, and there's really no other space for you to really say the things that you may want, and then we're really focused on Franklin Park.
Yeah,
like all the parks.
Absolutely. I mean, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to Lauren Bryant about Franklin Park. We haven't released the plan for the official comment period for the plan yet. So that's what I said. I think it's at the end of the summer, early fall, we'll be able to release the plan, and then we'll have a 60-day comment period that people will be able to provide, written comments on any thoughts at that point. But if there are things right now that you want to make sure we're hearing, I mean, I'm taking notes, I'm hearing comments here. I know this is being recorded, so all of this is being captured. But if you want to provide additional, direct feedback, I can drop I know you know my email, but other people might not know my email. So let me put that in the chat, as well as Lauren Bryant's email, and you can reach out that way as well.
Thank you, Liza.
I was just trying to do a double up with the open space plan survey, because that's open right now, and we're going to close it in a couple of weeks, and I only have so many chances to tell people about it. That we are at all the coffee hours, so that's another time and place that people can come out and talk to us about anything related to, it's more than just parks, it's all city services, but you can talk to us about parks there as well.
On our website, what I can do after this meeting is to make a form for folks that it'll call the Franklin Park Action Plan Feedback Form. And
Great, that'd be
that can
great.
automatically just collect people's comments, and it's free text. And just that automatically just gets sent over to Liza if that's acceptable for the community. Is that a thumbs up for everyone?
Yeah, that sounds good, Fatima. I would appreciate that link when you get a minute.
Okay, I'll do it. It'll be on the front homepage, so you don't have to search for it. Okay.
Great idea.
Okay. All righty. Thank you very much, Liza, for
Yeah, thank you for giving me time. I appreciate that. I know that I feel like there's a lot to talk about, and there's plenty more work to be done. So I appreciate you
There
sharing some of your evening.
I think also we're going to try to get more community members to be on the Franklin Park Action Committee. I feel that that is probably a committee that probably a lot of people don't realize that they can join. So that might also be, because it is long-term and it is getting to know more people who are involved. Thank you again very much. We're going to be moving on to our next item, the Mattapan mapping project. Alenza, you're on again.
Thanks, Fatima.
Thank you.
Hi, everybody. As you know, I'm Alenza. I'm joined by my team members, Lori and Cecily. And it's been a long time since we've done an update on the Mattapan mapping project. So we wanted to go very quickly. I think this will probably be about a 6 to 10 minute presentation, and then we'll have a little room for Q&A. So we want to get through this piece really quickly, but we want to make sure that you're aware about where things are with our project, because there's a lot of updates that have occurred since the last time we presented at the council meeting. It was December of 2021. So, or maybe December of 2020. Honestly, I can't remember because it's been that long. So this is a good time to re-engage. So I'm going to share my screen and try to get through these slides relatively fast. So let's start here. Okay, so the mapping project. Just to quickly summarize, the mapping project is both a research initiative that me and my team are working on, as well as the development of a website. For some reason, can you still see my screen? Okay, something happened.
It switched over from the slideshow to something else.
Let me stop sharing then. I don't know why I did that. Let me try that again. Okay. I think something weird happened with PowerPoint. I think that might have been it.
Okay.
At any rate, to keep the time going, I will keep talking. So some of you who have probably heard about the project before, and for those who have not heard about the project, the mapping project really began almost 5 years ago is when we initially started exploring this. As a resident of Mattapan, I was born and raised here, and I too struggle with the threat of displacement. It doesn't matter, my academic background or my humble beginnings. We're all sort of dealing with it, whether you're a renter or a home owner. So the idea here was really to create a space online where folks can access information easily to learn different strategies for tackling these issues. I think you can see this now. Yes?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So the tool is a user-friendly online mapping platform. It's a lot of jargon here, but basically what it is that it's a website where we're trying to compile different types of land use data and statistics, as well as qualitative data, which are storytelling, images, other types of creative media, to kind of tell a bigger picture story about what's happening in the community. The intent here is for this to be a research project, but it's participatory in that we want it to be co-designed and co-developed with you. And it engages the Mattapan community, not only just to inform, but also with hoping to inspire people to act and take on and participate. So the team here is myself, Fatima, as you all know Fatima. Lori, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lori. I am an anti-displacement activist in Somerville. And in my spare time, I teach in the Department of Urban and Environmental Policy and Planning at Tufts University.
Thanks, Lori. We also have Lily Song, who is a professor at Northeastern University, initially working at Harvard GSD. Caleb Patel, who's our assistant planner at Powerful Pathways. Sasha Holkauer, who some of you have met. She actually has just left the team, but she was working on this project for 2 years. So we thought to honor her and have her there. And Cecily, who's also on the call right now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Cecily Hill. I am a recent grad from Harvard Graduate School of Design, and I now work as an urban planner out in Austin, but I'm originally from New York.
Awesome. Thanks, Cecily. And then we also have Barry Fradkin, who's a GIS analyst. And more importantly, there's you. As community members, you are also a part of this. This project cannot exist without you. And I also just want to make a quick mention that, all of our team members have had some experience or some knowledge point around displacement. And, as Lori mentioned, she's an activist, particularly working on anti-gentrification in Somerville. Somerville is going through massive changes, as you all know, with the Green Line extension and a number of other things happening. And Cecily's from the Bronx, and the Bronx is going through rapid changes as we speak. So there's, a deep connection and a passion behind this work. So what exactly are we talking about? Well, ultimately, as we know, trying to track land use data, even for those of us who do this for a living, is very hard. It's often scattered. You are going to different websites to find information. That information is sometimes not updated, or it's missing key pieces. It can be deeply hidden. Does anybody know where to go to find building permits of any new access to building permits in the city? It's like you don't know where to go to get this information. So it can be complex and confusing. But the other side of it is that the qualitative, which is the storytelling piece, the nuance, is often missing as well. So how do we understand what, as one resident told me back in 2017, when I did a focus group with residents for the neighborhood, is what do we need to know in order to know what we need to do to circumvent gentrification? And that's essentially what this website is intending to do, and what this project seeks to do, is to compile all of this data, both qualitative and quantitative, and to present it in a coherent and comprehensive way so that you have the information that you need in order to take action, to propose policy, or just to be more informed in general about what's happening. So in short, the website is intended to do a few things. You can go on and you can look up information about different development projects. You can listen to an audio clip from the oral histories / love stories, which we'll talk more about in a second. You can watch a video, or you can even just learn about the history of sites of specific meaning to the neighborhood. And there are many other uses for it as well. I'm not going to go through all of this because this is a lot of detail, but what I will say is over the past 2 years, our work has consisted of sort of 5 core areas: team building and relationship building, partnership development. So we have established partnerships with Northeastern and with Harvard, as I mentioned. We're also in particular working very core with Code for Boston, which is a group of volunteer computer scientists that are part of Code for America, which is a national organization. They have a Boston chapter here. Ongoing research, processes where we're getting community feedback, like through focus groups and neighborhood walks, workshops, meeting with the GMNC committees, and then building out the tool itself. So these are our various partners. I'd say above the line are the core partners that we work with and connect with on a regular basis. And these other partners have been assisting with different aspects of research. This is an example of some of the history that we've been capturing. We've been looking at not just Mattapan present day, but also going back, like what got us to this point? What are some of the conditions that sort of tell us the bigger story of neighborhood change? We've been examining different types of aspects around rent burden and living conditions and what are contributions to that. For example, this is a triple decker on Greendale Road, just 2 blocks from where I live, that was recently posted a couple months ago for $1.6 million. Considering that our median income in this neighborhood is about $45,000, half of the area median income that the city uses to determine affordable housing, we have a lot stacked up against us. We've also done a myriad of other types of research where we're looking at different development projects. And the idea here is so that people can understand the different types of mixed uses for development, especially what exists, but also what is coming. And I'm gonna pause here and invite Cecily, if you wanna share more about some of the research analysis, and then we'll go into engagement.
Sure. So we've tried to really utilize a number of community resources that are not only analytical and database, but also cultural, to try and form a really holistic view of the community and to understand all of the things that are stacked up against folks in Mattapan. And so what you can see here is just us trying to kind of compile all of the data, as Alency was saying. So many of the sources are really disparate and scattered, and trying to create a system in which we can pull together some of these hard facts and create a place where we can reference it kind of in a more accessible and easier way that's digestible to everyone. So just, we've got some housing quick facts and other things that we're assembling on our database.
And here are some other examples of that, where we're trying to take a deeper look at zoning code and the different types of projects that are happening in the city. And that ranges from things like, where do we see a combination of, like, for example, streetlight outages, the kind of reports that are coming in through 311. What does that tell us about things that are happening either on a common basis or something that's unique to Mattapan? I'll pass this one to Cecily.
Thanks. So in addition to just really pulling together some of the facts, we've also tried to do a range of engagement. I know Lori will speak to some of it in a minute, but what you can see here is our kind of youth workshop that we did with some of the folks who are involved with Mattapan Food and Fitness Coalition. And we had kind of like multi-generational opportunity for folks to put pins and sticky notes where there's community spaces that they love, things that they want to see improved. A lot of what we heard was like, there's too much fast food, not enough healthy options. We would love more spaces for us to just hang out as kids and like go somewhere after school. So I think these are considerations that we're hoping can reach decision makers and influence the shape of Blue Hill Avenue as it shifts a bit.
So as part of our ongoing engagement, in addition to focus groups and conversations we've had with neighborhood associations, where we'll talk more about, we also have been doing things like neighborhood walks. As I mentioned, we have also been meeting with members of different committees on the GMNC, We initially began working really closely with the outreach committee and the public services committee so that we could get ongoing input. And this is trying to create a process where we're getting information from different ends of the neighborhood, and also getting diverse feedback and opinions from different community members. And I'll pass it to Lori.
Okay, so in addition to everything that everyone said, we're also facilitating community storytelling. And what you see here is a picture of Earl Falk. You may know him in relation to Almond Park, and he told us the story of his involvement and others' involvement in the redevelopment of Almond Park. And one of the things that he said that you may be able to discern here in the quote is that
I can play the video.
people, can you play the video? It's 10 seconds.
Yep. Let me play. Just let me know if folks can hear this. The volume is as loud as it can, so you may need to up your volume a little bit.
I think, Alenza, you need to share the audio.
Maybe I'll just fill in what Earl said and we can share more of it later. So what Earl lifted up is that often we tell stories, but we only tell the hard parts of the stories, and we rarely tell the good news story. And this is a chance for people to flesh out those data that have already been mentioned, to tell full picture, robust stories that link what has happened in the past, what is happening in the future, with visions of what can happen in the future. And we like to call these love stories. And they're love stories because, like all good love stories, they have three components. They're about passion, what folks love about Mattapan, past, present, and future. They're about heartbreak, what needs fixing in Mattapan. And they're about the yearning or longing to restore what was wonderful in the past, or to actualize visions for what could be in the future. So that's what the love stories are. And we also know that in addition to illustrating what it's really like to live in Mattapan in those three ways, the passion, the heartbreak, and the longing for the vision of what could be, and in addition to enriching those, they're also plant seeds for action, and they connect people together like good stories do. So people are mobilized to take action around their common ideas about the passion that's worth saving, the heartbreak that's worth fixing, towards the vision of what there can be. So we're doing this storytelling in a way that captures the stories that you have already told or have not yet been told, either in group settings or one-on-one, me collecting them, others collecting them, and we're hoping there'll be a cadre of Mattapan residents telling stories to one another, because it's in the telling that we build those connections and find the common ground for action.
Thanks, Lori. I'm going to try to play the clip again. Hopefully we'll be able to hear it this time.
Wants to hear good news.
Okay, let's try it.
I know, you're dying to tell your story to somebody, to let you know what what we got. It's just absolutely. But nobody wants to hear good news.
Did folks hear that one?
We do want to hear good news.
Yeah, awesome. So shout out to Earl for sharing his story. And but he talked about, not only he talked about his experience with organizing around Almond Park, but he also talked about how, it's really up to us to kind of bring back balance to how the neighborhood is portrayed and depicted. So thanks for that, and thanks, Lori.
I know.
So the website is still under construction, but it basically looks like this. I'm going to pop in the chat a link so that you can all see the temporary website that we're building out. And one of the reasons why we are trying to get as many people involved is because this can't exist. This project, like I said before, it can't exist and it won't be as strong as it can be without community input. So, you know, we want to make sure that we're taking note of all the things that are signs of neighborhood change. And if there's a aspect of neighborhood change which is going to be detrimental, we at least are prepared to propose policy or take action around it. You know, like for example, some of you might have seen there's a lot more "We Buy Ugly Houses" signs popping up all over the neighborhood. We want to geotag all of those. We want to put those on the map so that we can say this is where these are being posted, so that we know that that means that there's speculator activity going on, and that means that there are developers or people who are interested in investing in homes. They're willing to buy cash, but the problem with that is it ends up disrupting the housing market for other people who either want to buy or sell homes. So that kind of activity is actually really predatory. And I've had residents who have told me that they've had phone calls from people as far as China saying they want to buy their house, and almost in a threatening way, like, well, you're too old, you're a senior, you can't afford to live in this place. And that's another thing that we're also saying, is that as much as some people might want their homes to become more valuable, there's also the property taxes are going up. So there is a deep impact on the community. And it's a matter of like, how do we balance the good that's coming in while also protecting folks who to stay? So these are the ultimately reasons why we wanted to create this tool. One, so that because residents are mobilizing. As we know, there's a city planning process underway. There's a lot of activity that's happening. You know, there's the Blue Hill Ave, the Corridor Initiative. There's a lot of different things that are bringing a lot of attention to the neighborhood. How do people navigate, you know, those processes if they don't have information readily available to them? This tool provides education as well as information for advocacy. It's intended to help promote more equitable policy. And it's to also, the other piece about it, which is why the storytelling is so poor, it's rebranding Mattapan's past, present, and future. This isn't like the roughshod neighborhood that people outside of this community describe it as. We know that. And we want to make sure that we get the chance to tell that story. So it also destigmatizes the community, in particular this community, and it expands the definition and analysis of what displacement means. Because also when we talk about even the term gentrification, a lot of people are on different opposite sides around what that means. Like when we unpack it, there are a lot of different aspects to understanding what's happening. So long story short, we want you to be involved. So we have a user testing session that's happening actually tomorrow. We've had a few people sign up, but we'd like to see more people sign up. We need at least 10 people. We are paying you for your time. We do not believe in not compensating people. So you can get a stipend to either be a user tester, you can be get a stipend to sign up and join our field research team, and you could get a stipend if you'd like to be interviewed for a love story or some other media project. So I'm gonna pop these links in the chat, and mindful that we are running out of time, I will close now so that we can open for questions. Thank you.
We can also have those all those links posted on our website, Melissa. Are there any questions anybody has? No, doesn't look like there are any hands raised. Right. But thank you. No, thank you. Let's see. I check what they. No, I don't see any questions being placed currently about the project. But I hope that people definitely do sign up to participate. There are, as Lensa said, there are stipends ranging from $25 to $100, depending on your level of engagement. It is about our community, and remember, this information is for us to use, and it's completely valid. It is things that we can use when we're talking to the BPDA about projects. We're talking to developers, pointing and telling them where there already are developments coming in play. it is important information, and that is current. It's not something that you have to go and search for. It's because it's right there. There's, okay. Thank you, Alonso. Thank you, team. Much appreciated, all your efforts. I'm looking forward to the final tool that we can use. And mind you, guys, when we, every Sunday, when I go out on my walk, we could start, I could use some hands. We can start putting some information while on the walk directly into the tool from our smartphones, right? So you all, I know there has to be somebody who's up at 7 a.m. who wants to come out with me. I know there has to be. I'm looking forward to it. I see all these smiles, and some people are actually on camera. they're laughing with me. I'm thinking, not at me. Yes, Nicole, I'm looking at you. Thank you again, guys. So we're going to move on to the committee reports. The first one is the Public Services Committee. Matthew had to go to a work function, so he actually asked me to do the report for it. Tomorrow at 6:30, there is a Zoom meeting for the Public Services Committee. The guest speaker will be Captain John Flynn from Area B3, and the topic is going to be about the street closures. So I will, if anyone wants to put their email in the chat, if they haven't already signed up for that talk, I will make sure that you're sent the link for the meeting. Regarding for the zoning committee, there wasn't anyone this month, but there will be one coming up next month regarding, I believe there has been interest in the right now vacant KFC building. So that may be coming up, just so people know something coming up about that. Not last but not least, on the Housing and Development Committee, we had Daria Vega did a presentation before about the Will Avenue parcels. Whoever is not muted, if you can mute. I don't have to talk over. Thank you. And there's going to be continued talk about that development, as well as the other individuals and teams that have won that were granted the different parcels for the B1 Blue Hill Avenue parcels. The other ones regarding for the parks and open spaces besides Franklin Park, there also is this summer we should be wrapping up, I think, the city with the Norfolk Park. There was $750,000 that went into renovation for that park. Everything from lighting to equipment, the condition of the field, the playground, which is next to the Mildred Ave School. All that was supposed to, was under construction. So hopefully this summer we should see, a new park or redone park, so to speak. Moving on, community updates. I know that, I'll just start off and say this, that is Dante here? Is he online? Is Dante? He is not.
Well, hello.
Hi, Junice.
Yes.
How are you?
Good. How are you? Yes.
You want to
So,
Dante?
yeah, I was going to
Okay.
say, so actually Dante, he has actually transitioned out of his position as the ONS Mattapan liaison. So I believe that he has been replaced, but yes, I don't know if the person is on right now. I just
No, that person is not on, but I was just going to, I was looking for Dante just in case he was in the crowd.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I just wanted
No, I appreciate your advocacy. Dante has moved on to another department. He has a promotion. The new person who is going to be just started today and has to go through an onboarding process. I believe his name is Eric. And will be introduced at the next GMNC meeting. And we're going to, of course, ourselves as well as me and all of the different neighborhood associations and organizations will get to meet him and work just as well as we had with Dante in the community processes. So we're looking forward to his participation. Let's see, are there any other neighborhood associations that want to mention anything? There is a Tea Talks. Alonso, you can even chime in. This Thursday, June 9th, that folks may want to be on. Alonso, do you want to say a few things about it? Because I know I don't see Chevelle online.
Sure. Yeah, Chevelle's out of town.
Okay.
So we have also been working with Mattapan Food and Fitness, as many of you know, for the past couple years now, to put together these transit talks. As I mentioned earlier, I'm a big transit advocate because I live in this neighborhood and I have no car. So we have been doing these talks for a couple years. We have one coming up as a part, it's actually a two-parter, this Thursday and the next Thursday. And I will pop that link in the chat as well. And while I have the floor, I also want to reinforce that we'd love to have folks participate in the user testing. So please click that link and sign up. And then we also are doing a neighborhood walk on June 18 at 8:30 a.m. Because we were doing walks in the afternoon and we know that folks would prefer to do it in the morning. So it'll be an opportunity to get exercise as well as us. We're going to go around and take some pictures to inform the mapping tool, but also we will be providing the City of Boston feedback regarding the Blue Hill Ave project. So it's a great way to get involved while also getting your steps in. So I'm going to pop that in the link as well.
Let's see. Are there any other neighborhood groups that want to give any community information? Cornelius, do you want to say anything? Speak? Sure.
Hello, everyone.
Oh, there you are.
Okay, I've been absent for some time,
That's okay.
but I live in the neighborhood. I want to just mention that my current employment with First Republic Bank is to do more lending in the community that I live in. And one of the ways to do that is by offering a rate as low as 3.25% for those who qualify, but also could also work for first-time homebuyers. So I just want to basically put myself out there to say if there's a need for information, conversation, and please reach out and I can let you know what we have going on.
Great, thank you. If you want to put any of your information in the chat, please do. Nicole?
Yes. Evening, everyone. My name is Nicole. I'm the chair of Mattapan Square Main Streets. Just two quick things. So Mattapan Square Main Streets is in search of a new executive director. I'm going to put the link in the chat of, for folks to apply and the job listing. So please, share that. We are looking for our executive director to come in and assist. And the other thing is that we are doing our stroll of the district on June 24th. And that flyer will also circulate that flyer and that will be going around. So just keep that in mind. June 24th from 12 to 5 is literally right in the middle of Mattapan Square. Our theme this year is health and wellness. So those are my two things. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Lynette and Nina? Hi.
Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I had to sign up for a second, for a few minutes. are you guys still talking about the mapping project or that passed?
No, that passed. If you had a
Okay.
community update, I didn't know if
Okay.
you had a community update.
Community update. Well, our meeting is next week, the June 16th. So please join us if you can, because we're going to be talking. We're going to have the chief of streets.
Yasha Franklin Bunch.
Yes, he will be joining us to talk about the bridge from Mascot, that's joining Mascot and Norfolk Bridge.
Okay.
And so we're inviting, we need your support, and we hope to see you there.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Do you have, if you could email myself the link to your Zoom meeting, and that way we could post it so people can join. Thank you
Wonderful.
so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Azan? Azan, do you want to unmute yourself?
Yeah, I was trying to. On the 14th and the 28th of June, we'll be doing a walk at Almont Park, just to walk and talk and create good health and good energy. MJE, Mothers for Justice, and Mattapan Community Health Center. And if anybody want to come down, just come down. It's from 3 to 4 p.m. Just want to say that. Thank you, everybody.
Great, thank you. There is for Juneteenth on the Saturday before, on June 18th, there is an event at Franklin Park. It's honoring the Roxbury Homecoming Committee original members, as well as celebrating Juneteenth and Family Day. It's going to be in the same area near the Shattuck picnic area. So people can bring chairs and, do what we normally would do, but there's also going to be part of the event where there actually are plaques given to the original members. So that is June 18th from 11 a.m. until I believe it is 7. Thank you. Want to move on to, I don't see any other hands. Are there, moving on to the city and elected official updates? Oh, I see Chris Westfall, you put some information in. Did you want to say anything, Chris?
I can give a quick update from the House if that works.
Sure.
Yeah, great plug for Juneteenth, and which is great. On the 18th, everyone should come out. And then on the House, we've passed a few bills recently. We passed a bond bill that included a moratorium to ensure that we're not building any new prisons or jails. Passed a bill that clarifies that revenge porn is sexual harassment, and social equity legislation for the cannabis industry. And also we passed the Work and Family Mobility Act, which we keep passing, and might have a veto override of the governor soon, which would provide driver's licenses or allow for driver's licenses for everyone regardless of immigration status. So lots going on at the State House, and my contact info is in the chat. Reach out anytime.
Thank you. Kenya, BPDA? I'm not sure if she's doing multiple meetings. Kenya, are you in another meeting also? Okay, maybe she's had to step away. Judnice, did you want to say anything from Councilor Roy's office?
Yeah, just a quick update that the first budget vote is likely this Wednesday. This Wednesday's meeting, I believe it starts at 12.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Is there anyone from Councilor Royal's office on? No, I don't.
Yes, hi. My name is Deanna Vega. It's actually my first week here, so yeah. This is my
welcome.
first meeting as well. There will be some events that'll be coming up soon for resident. So as I know more, I'll be able to share more with you about that.
I believe there is a coffee hour this month, though I did not see a date come up, but I've heard that some people have spoken about it.
Yeah, it's going to be on the 30th.
It's going to be the 30th of June.
Yeah,
Thank you, Barbara.
the 30th of June at 9:30 at Norfolk Park.
At Norfolk Park. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So we get to go
And I
there.
just want to also mention that West Selden Street has a $500 scholarship grant for high school seniors. And
Oh, wonderful.
I'm putting the information in the chat, but
Okay.
our deadline is July 15th. So we're looking for any high school seniors that would like to receive a $500 grant. Please apply for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other city officials or elected officials who like to give any news or updates? Going once, going twice. I do have to close out the evening. I do have one, even though she's not on, I did wanted to congratulate her. Our board member, Janae Trent Leslie, she is a finalist for the NAACP AXO, and she actually is going on to the national competition this July from July 14th through the 20th. It's for poetry performance and poetry written. She wrote an original poem. She also is graduating, I believe, this coming up, not weekend, and she'll be attending Spelman College in the fall. So that's news. We also will be, so as coming up, we also will be having some new younger members from our community be joining us, just to make sure that there are a variety of points of view and that we're actually reflective of our community. So it is now approaching almost 8:30. We are half an hour over. Just so people know, next month's meeting is actually going to be held on July 11th. And that'll be the only meeting of July because we're going to take the rest of the month off to people, our team here, a break. And because the first Monday in July is actually July 4th. So if there are no other updates from anybody, I want to wish everyone a wonderful evening and thank you for coming. I will be, as I said, posting that form on our website so people can fill out specifically for Franklin Park and not all the other parks. And our participation, just remember, if we don't take care of it, it won't take care of us. So that's about it for here. As I say, I love you all, but you gotta go. So nice to see everyone. Hey, Cleon, haven't seen you forever. I think I saw Drew.
Hi, everyone. Blessings to everybody.
Thank you. You too. Hi, Angela.
Welcome.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Senora Lisa.
Bye.
Hey, Drew.
Not everyone.
My gosh. Like, I think I saw a couple of names here that I haven't seen for a little bit. Hey, Miss Kenya. How are you?